Earlier this summer, we got our first glimpse at the Mandalorian himself coming to the Star Wars Legion tabletop. He looked really strong, but a lot was still unknown. Now, fast forward to this last week where we got the full kit reveal and October release, by the way, for both Mando and his little green buddy. And I think it's fair to say that, yeah, in fact, he looks pretty strong stat-wise and has quite the little toolkit. But will he be able to fit well into our armies? Let's discuss. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Star Wars Legion folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando for another Lazy Legion Sunday. Thanks for hanging out this morning, talking Din Djarin, the Mandalorian himself, as well as his little green buddy, Grogu. Let's go ahead and get right into this. Now, we had seen some of his stuff before, but now we have everything. All right, so that's really exciting. We also know that we have a mid to late October release. I wonder what else is coming out. Maybe the EA units. We will see. Either way, let's go ahead and get into this. So running through his unit card, dude's strong, right? Dude's really strong. So he's 105 points for basically everything you want to put on a unit. Arsenal 2, he has Bounty, of course, which is interesting because I do believe this is the first bounty for the Rebels, because he can work for the Empire or the Rebels. He has the Mando thing with Impervious, so you add a die for each Pierce. Independent Aim 1, Dodge 1, and then Tactical 1. This guy is pooping out aim tokens like crazy. 5 health, 3 courage, pretty unlikely to panic. Could happen, but unlikely to panic. Surge to crit, surge to block. Arsenal 2, by the way, right? So as we go through this, remember, so we have Lethal 1 on his Vibro Knife with 2 black dice, and then his pistol, 2 reds and a black at range 1 to 2 with Lethal, Longshot 1, and Versatile, right? So generally, those are things that they're a little expensive, but again, you're pooping out aim tokens like crazy here, and your dice are also pretty good. So I think in many cases here, you're probably going to use one. You're moving and getting an aim, and you're probably not giving them because then you get an aim and a dodge. Pretty good. You could very easily be piercing at range 3 with 2 reds and a black. It's very possible here, right? Now, going into his toolkit, and we're going to talk about Grogu in a second. That's okay, but I want to go through his toolkit because this was what I think we were waiting for. We had already seen the Amban rifle before, and then the flame projector and the Mando jetpack had come out, I think, in a gameplay video. So we're waiting to see what else he had, and the last thing is the Beskar spear. Now, I see, let's just start with the jetpack. When I had done the video on him before, I was basically like, hey, I don't see a world in which he doesn't come out with the jetpack, and then, of course, it came out like right after I shot it. But I also don't see a world in which we don't run him with the jetpack, because he only has speed 2 base, and for 15 points, you give him jump 2 and speed 3. Now, that might inherently be like, well, that's kind of expensive for 15 points, and I think it is. But I think it also makes a lot more sense, because if I throw up the OG Boba Fett card, it puts him on, and by this I mean OG Boba Fett, not Dad Bod Boba, right? But if we put this up against Boba, I think that makes a lot more sense in terms of points costing and what they do. Now, Din's still way better. Like there's no question in my opinion. He appears to be better, at least to me. But again, I think that's if you're using the jetpack, right? And remember, he's got the 1 to 2. Yes, you can use an aim to get it longer, but you really want to get up there and into it, because we look at some of his stuff, like, guy kind of wants to be in melee, right? Now, I also want to point out that you have Versatile on your gun, which means that when you are in melee, right, with your Vibro Knife or whatever else you may have, but you definitely have to use 1, but you can also shoot somebody outside of melee, which is pretty cool. And then Beskar Spear, this was the new reveal, or at least to me. You gain Duelist, so you can spend an aim to gain Pierce. Okay, makes sense. 2 reds and a black. So that means if you want to go full on melee, you can throw 2 reds and 3 blacks with Lethal 1, and then with Pierce 1, right? So Pierce 2. That's pretty good. Now that's assuming no rerolls, but that's pretty good, right? All right. Now, and keep in mind, spending the aim token, yeah, that's how it works, folks. All right, moving on to the flame projector. I'll be honest, I don't like the flame projector. It's a consumable for 8 points. It gives you spray. I mean, spray's really good, especially in, the larger units. Rolling red die for it. I mean, if you're up against a droid unit, potentially rolling 7 or 8 dice, right? That's pretty good. But it is a consumable, and it's only range 1. And I think that it just looks to me like with the other stuff he has that you'd probably rather just be engaged. I mean, it's a lot of dice. I can see the use for it, but if you're going to be playing him as a close-up unit, I think you just kind of go in on it. And or you go with the en-bon rifle build, which we'll talk about here in a second, and then I think you I think you probably don't need it. And then the en-bon rifle we talked a lot about before, so this one's very interesting. You use his entire activation to basically plink at somebody. Now, it's not an attack, so it gets around all the tricks, right? You just basically, if you roll ink on the die, you put a wound and you give him a suppression. But it's his whole activation, both actions to do it. So and in that case, you would build him out probably to counter my thing before. Probably you don't build him with the jetpack on that, probably, because what are you paying for if you're just plinking across the table, right? So if you're going to just use him as a sniper, and it's cool that you can play him the different ways. It's very cool. I'm not taking away from it. It just, it's kind of like its own upgrade on him, makes him 115 points, which is pretty much on par with like IG and a lot of the other operatives that we've seen. So makes sense from there. All right, now his command cards. We had before seen Whistling Birds. Let's just go ahead and start with that. I know it's the 3-pip, but let's start with that. So during his activation, he gains choose up to 3. So as an action, choose up to 3 enemy units at range 1 in line of sight. For each chosen unit, roll 1 attack die for each mini in that unit. That unit suffers 1 wound for each ink. Wow, that's pretty good. It's pretty good. And actually, before I said ink before, and it's hit or crit, not surge. I do take that back. I apologize. That is what I said before. So this Whistling Birds is crazy good. And, even what are the chances of getting all 3? Maybe not great in a game. If they know you've got it, they're probably not going to be clumped up. But the potential's there, right? It's pretty good. All right, so this is the way. You had to expect that would be a card, right? This is 1-pip. All of these, by the way, are Din Djarin only, which makes sense, right? Because that's pretty consistent with a lot of the bounty hunter operatives that we've seen. So Din gains 1 dodge and relentless. So after you perform a move, you may perform a free attack. So that's pretty cool, especially again with that jetpack. And remember, he's got tactical. So you don't give him an order. You move, and then shoot. You got a bunch of aims to do lethal and long shot and reroll if you need to, and not too bad deal there. I mean, that's just a good card, right? I like those odds. Din gains 1 aim token because he needs more aim tokens. After he performs an attack action, he may perform an additional attack against a different unit. Now that's why he needs those additional aims, because he's got to spend them to get his pierce and stuff like that. These are both pretty solid, right? Yeah, I mean, Whistling Birds is incredible, but they're both really solid, and they're both pretty straightforward ones to use, which I guess is good and bad, right? It means you don't have to do anything crazy to try and set up for it. On the other hand, your opponent probably knows what you're going to try to do, and these are him only. So take it with a grain of salt. All right, now let's talk the little green buddy. So we'd seen the little green buddy before. He's a counterpart. You add him on. Actually, yeah, add him on to Din. He can also go on IG-11, by the way, because we'd seen that as well. But so he basically gives you kind of a capture the flag type thing when he goes down. But then his latent power at the end of your activation, gain 1 suppression to roll a red defense, and on a surge, choose an enemy unit at range 1. The unit gains 2 suppression and 2 immobilize. On a blank result, remove a wound or poison from a friendly non-trooper at range 1 of this mini. That's pretty neat, right? And this just happens, right? It just happens. But you may do it. It happens every time, but you may do it by choosing to take the suppression. But probably going to do it. All right, now, he has his own command card, which is the hand thing, which just doesn't do anything, right? So card cannot be select, and by that I mean it doesn't issue any orders. Is what I mean. Sorry, this game does not that the card doesn't do anything. Otherwise, why would there be the card? Card cannot be selected during the command phase. When a friendly unit at range 1 and in line of sight is declared as defender, you may discard this card from your hand. Okay, so it just uses up space in your hand. And if you do, the defending unit gains 2 dodge tokens and gains deflect during this attack, right? So you can actually hit back, potentially. That's pretty cool. But it uses up a slot in your hand, and you can just discard it. So you only have so many command cards. This is actually probably, I mean, if you really think about it in skirmish mode, you always have extra cards in skirmish mode. And that's potentially pretty good, right? Because if like, let's say you're running Din. Well, obviously, I mean, but otherwise, what are you talking about, right? But so you're running Din, and you have Grogu on there. I don't know that you do that in skirmish, but you typically have extras, and as long as Din doesn't go down, then you'd have a lot of options there. So I think it's pretty neat. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see what the smart kids do with it, but that's pretty interesting. All right, so let's go ahead now and talk how he fits in. I'll go ahead and bring up his weapons, because that's kind of what I find to be cool, right? His toolkit, and his toolkit is a little weird, right? I love the fact that it's customizable, but it's a little weird in terms of fitting into an army. I mean, when I actually look at this, he screams Empire to me, honestly. Like that's kind of where I think he's gonna fit best. But maybe that's just because I had tried to work with Boba Fett for so long, and maybe I'm just right. I have several like Iden lists where I'm like Boba Fett or Bossk or people like that, or builds like that. So maybe I'm predispositioned to that. It is cool that he can come work for the Rebels, but it seems to me that he might be better in an Empire list. And the reason is because you can do, the Empire's a little more beefy in that, like, their core units and stuff don't just get trounced. But maybe you run in with maybe in the Rebels you run in with some Clan Wren Mandos or something and try to get up there. And I don't know, because it seems to me that the Amban rifle thing, seems to me there's better ways to do that, personally. So it seems to me that you want to run him with his jetpack and his Beskar spear, I think that's what makes sense to me. But let me know, folks, what you think. Are you excited about him? How are you planning on building him? He starts getting pretty expensive pretty quick when you start adding these things on, right? And that's before we go add trainings and all that sort of stuff, which I think, he's a pretty big point investment. I think you're going to want to give him some stuff, I think, especially if you're taking him into melee, right? You're going to want to put on what you need to put on there. So, that old tenacity for an extra die is always pretty good when you're charging in. So, I don't know. Let me know, folks, what you guys are thinking. Thanks very much for tuning in. I'd love to hear your ideas about how we can use this guy, maybe in the Rebel list. Are you looking at Empire list? What are you looking at? Let me know. Go Commando.
Thank you.